Compliance, the final frontier. Tom Fox is the voyager of trekking through compliance. His mission? To explore the original series and seek out and share what it can teach you about compliance. Here's your host, Tom Fox.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. I would like to welcome you to a special encore series of Trekking Through Compliance. This series will focus on the 2020 television show Picard. In this series, I'm joined by Megan Doherty. Megan is co-founder and partner at One Stone Creative, a podcast production firm. Megan is a Star Trek aficionado, although a Voyager Star Trek aficionado. And as all of you listeners know, I'm an original series aficionado. Nevertheless, we both love Jean-Luc Picard, and we are going to explore the lessons learned and the shows and our love for Star Trek in the context of Picard. So sit back and enjoy this special presentation from Trekking Through Compliance. Okay, hello everybody. This is Tom Fox backing in with Megan Doherty for our continued exploration of Picard. Megan, of course, is the co-founder of One Stone Creative, and I am the compliance evangelist. This is the series where we review Picard, which is currently streaming on CBS. Today, we take a look at episode 6, The Impossible Box. In this episode, Soji is experiencing a recurring dream of her childhood. Narek believes that by exploring her dream, it will reveal the location of her homeworld, which is something he desperately wants. Aboard La Serena, Jurati, Megan's new favorite friend, tells Picard that Bruce Maddox has died as a result of his injuries on Freecloud. Rafi persuades a Starfleet contact to issue Picard temporary diplomatic credentials so the Romulans will let him visit the artifact and meet with Hugh. Narek continues sowing seeds of doubt with Soji about her identity. In a very poignant scene, I thought she scans all of her belongings and is stunned to find that none of them are older than 37 months. Narek helps her meditate to explore her dreams while his invidious sister, the spy, is secretly monitoring them. In the dream, Soji sees herself as a doll, and when she looks up into the sky, she sees 2 red moons and a violently electrical stormy sky. This is enough for Narek and his sister to begin looking for her home planet. Narek tries to kill Soji, but she activates and escapes. From this escape, she meets Picard and Hugh, who have been touring around the artifact. Hugh takes Picard and Soji to an emergency long-distance transportation device, allowing them to escape the artifact. Romulan's guards try to stop them, but Elnor appears and kills them all, or staying behind with Hugh to hold off the pursuers. So, Megan, what struck you about this episode?
I really liked this episode. I thought some of the things they were bringing up, like the scene with Narek and Soji in kind of the Romulan hypnosis room and then the radiation poisoning, was gorgeous and fantastic and really exciting. I absolutely loved when Rafi was kind of bluffing her old Starfleet friend to get the diplomatic pass. I thought that was great. Picard's kind of flashbacks to being Locutus were pretty touching. I really liked this one. What about you? What were your kind of big moments?
So this was, I thought, the most psychological episode, and in many ways a gut-wrenchingly psychological episode. First of all, with Picard and his comments about the Borg, that they just metastasize, and that they have to be destroyed, and how much he hates them, yet they still live within him, as we find out later in this show. And then his evolution of thinking within the show, because of Hugh, to recognizing that every Borg has been assimilated. Every Borg was someone else before they were assimilated. Every Borg had a personality not really taken away from them, but subsumed within the collective. And it really provided a completely different way to consider the Borg, which is individually as victims.
I thought it struck me as a little weird that was a realization, though. I mean, Picard himself had been assimilated and was still a person. 7 of 9 had been assimilated and was a person, and Hugh and each of and all these people. Like, I get that, kind of XBs are hated throughout the galaxy, but why? It's so plainly not their fault. Like, it's so obviously not the drone's fault that it was assimilated. In the universe, obviously, the Borg, they are hated, but I didn't quite understand the why. Like, the collective, sure, but the individuals, why?
I guess I found it to be revelatory because when you meet a drone, you have zero chance of basically, or very little chance of reestablishing their original personality. And they are such a onslaught of metastasized cancer, as Picard talks about it. And it's now clear that he still is Locutus of Borg. And it's a question I posed, at the start of the first episode, would we see him? Well, we did. And he had to see it, and he had to relive that, and he did. And that was, frankly, I thought pretty horrifying, what he's still going through because of the nanotechnology and the nanoprobes they put in him. I thought the collective was contacted, or you stayed in contact with the collective via some other means, but it appears to be the nanoprobes.
Yeah, and it's just, I like, because it was just there. And even Hugh had never been in the Queen's cell before, but just kind of knew where it was because of the hive mind.
And it was almost like a PSTD flashback. And I don't have those very often, but I've had a few, and you really can go directly back to whatever the triggering event was. So that was pretty horrific, I thought. And then the scene with Soji and the mind games played by Narek to help her remember. I'm not sure I bought his argument to his sister that there was a cognitive dissonance going on between the perceived human part of her and the known synth part of her, trying to figure out which one they were.
Yeah, that seemed weird to me too. That
the part where he did unlock that portion of her mind. I've done some things like that too, and that can be pretty dramatic, and it certainly was. Although I thought seeing the model of herself was much more dramatic than the 2 red moons and the storm.
Yeah, that was really good, and I think that was a big reference too. I think that was a cookie, and we'll get to those later. But I think being kind of the wooden doll in and of itself was definitely a cookie. Narek, never trust a guy with that haircut. I can't believe she ever trusted a guy with that haircut. No one should trust a guy with that haircut.
Well, remember what Hugh said when Picard came on board and mentioned her? I mean, Hugh said, oh, yeah, the Romulan spy who came on board and for the last 2 weeks has been pretending not to be interested in her. It was obviously well known on the cube what he was there to do, yet no one really communicated that to Soji for some reason.
Yes, well, I think Soji's role there was with the Reclamation Project, not with the Romulans, right? So maybe there just wasn't, she wouldn't have listened anyway because of the haircut. There's one of those guys in every college class. They don't usually have, radiation poisoning boxes, but they're always bad. Exactly. It's the millennial mullet right there.
The mullet lives. Is that what you're telling me? So what did you think about Hugh's relationship with Picard? Was that genuine?
I think that definitely was genuine. I think because what they were talking about, Hugh right now is really living the work of reclaiming these Borg, helping them become individuals again, experiencing what must be a lot of pushback and a lot of stigma from the Federation and the rest of the galaxy. And then here's Picard who comes and who was also a Borg, but that was completely respected, had a great career, had great renown, was well beloved by the Federation and the rest of the world, at least until the whole Romulan thing. If there's anyone who's going to help the XBs become a part of society, it's Picard.
What about the reference to why Bruce Maddox created them? Did you really buy that whole backstory of Maddox did it so that he could figure out who was behind the attack of the synths?
Not really. I kind of glossed over that. actually. I kind of lost interest in Bruce Maddox after he was dead. It's just like, okay, he was a plot point. But
no one ever really dies on Star Trek.
I feel like I'm a lot more interested in how Data was involved than how Maddox was involved. I'm kind of waiting on that one, I think. The homeworld, I'm really curious about. Like, what is the homeworld? Are there more of them? Is there a whole homeworld worth of synths? That would be very cool.
So I really, I'm going to channel my inner Dr. Soong here and just think that,
okay.
He just created them. There's no homeworld. He was just a mad scientist and put them together. I really didn't buy Maddox's. Although if that reference by Maddox is correct, that he created them to find out what led to the synth rebellion, that does add a delicious level of complexity and deviousness to this.
True.
And maybe Girardi, maybe she's onto something.
Well, maybe because we still don't know what she knows, and I hope we find out very soon. We're running out of episodes.
Well, spoiler alert, it's coming.
It's coming, okay.
It's coming. It's coming. The action scenes. We didn't get as many action scenes as this one. There were two primary. Unfortunately, one we didn't see. But we had the action scene with Soji. And so for those listening to this podcast, she goes into this meditation chamber, figures out what she figures out. Narek leaves, and he leaves a radiation device or a poisonous gas device or something very cool device in a music box shaped as a Rubik's Cube, which he opens, it pops up, and the bad stuff starts to seep out. And this activates her, and she actually smashes through the floor and then transcends 2 or 3 levels down, of course, right next to Hugh and Picard. The action scene we didn't see, which I really wanted to see, was...
I was so sad.
when Elnor goes out to fight the Romulans who are there to attack the Queen's Hive, and we only know it didn't go well for the Romulans.
Well, that like his tagline, I guess. Please, friends, choose to live. It's so good.
Yes,
it's so good.
I mean,
and I noticed when Soji met Picard and Hugh, she said the same thing Daj did when Daj first met Picard, is, do you know me?
Right.
I thought that was kind of nice. That was a nice touch.
Bracelet that he had from Daj that he showed to Soji for his bona fides. I thought that was an interesting clue as well.
Yes, the necklace they both had, right? And that was like the last thing she scanned to find out that she was only 3 years old.
Right. So what were some of the cookies you liked?
Mention of Latinum.
Yes.
I thought that was
Latinum.
Gold-plated Latinum. And this is a question that I've in an amount of research I'm not going to describe because it incriminates me as a bigger nerd than I want to be known as. How Latinum actually works for members of the Federation baffles me, because it's supposed to be this post-money economy.
Right.
But other cultures obviously still have money. It's Latinum. How do Federation members get Latinum? Why are they betting with it? So, if anyone knows the answer to that, please reach out to me.
So what did you think, and did you think it was a cookie when Hugh said, our new queen is Romulan?
No, I didn't think that was a cookie. I thought that was kind of more of a plot point. So, and I think, are they talking about Narissa, or are they talking about the kind of prophetic Romulan from a few episodes ago?
Actually, I thought they were referencing...
Oh, like Romulans collectively. Okay. I thought they were talking about a specific female Romulan.
The device they used, which I believe came from Voyager, the Sicarians, I didn't realize they'd been assimilated. But the device, it was, would you call it a transport device, or was it something different?
I think they called it a trajector.
Right.
And it was definitely some kind of like instant transport device. Did you know that Soji knew how far it would transport you? 40,000 light years.
Right.
How did she know that?
She knew of the device. She's a smart girl.
Yeah.
Probably Canadian.
Maybe Canadian. But it was in the hidden Borg Queen cell. So I'm like, maybe was Borg technology used in her creation?
Oh,
does she have nanoparticles?
I thought she was just, that's a great point. I thought she just knew all things period. And she just said, study the Sicarians. I knew they had this.
That's definitely a possibility, but I think maybe there's more to it than that. Maybe there's a Borg connection to the synths.
Wow. Wouldn't that be juicy?
That would be really juicy.
So what did you make of the wooden doll? Did that have any sort of Pinocchio reference, or was that a Data reference?
I think it was exactly because Riker called Data Pinocchio. So I think that was like a very a direct reference.
I thought that was a Dr. Soong reference from one of the times we actually visited his lab. Mm-hmm. I recall seeing multiple.
I think even if it's not a direct reference, that was intentionally pulled, it's a pretty obvious one for synths. Like, computers that want to be real. Toys that want to be real. I think it's right there.
So what do you give this episode? Did it meet your hopes, expectations, wants, needed, or did it find that it dragged a little bit, or did it move the storyline forward?
No, I like there was a really good amount of moving forward in this one. I think it was better paced than the last one, which I thought was a little too much all in one go. But I thought the script and we're full into the rising action now, and I'm really excited to see the next one, which I have not yet. I've been incredibly disciplined.
Well, I don't have your self-discipline, so I went ahead and watched the next one, but that's okay.
Oh yeah, it's fine. Yeah, and what about you? How did this one suit you?
This one actually I thought was pretty revelatory for me, and it was really around the Borg. The first kind of time Picard has the breakdown, I think it's on the La Sirena, where he has the metastasizing talk, explaining how evil the Borg are and what they do to civilizations and societies. And then he comes to realize that these members of the collectives were individuals once, and that there's real tragedy here. Even if they were turned into lean, mean, killing machines, they didn't start out that way. So that was an interesting journey from him. The realization that you're not real, that's a tough one,
Yeah.
That's a lot of therapy, and she's got a lot more therapy to go. And I know you're Canadian, and that'd just be way too, much to share. But when your therapist makes you realize you don't exist, that's a tough one. So
I thought that scene was relatable though. Kind of finally staring at a bunch of evidence that reveals something that you either did or didn't know. Whereas for me, that was a real coming out allegory. Okay. So I thought that was an intensely relatable moment, and how difficult that can be, and how once you do know it, you can't believe you ever didn't know it. But yeah, I thought that was touchingly relatable.
So is that all part of the process? The first step is to have that self-realization, and then the second step is to acknowledge that to the outside world?
That's a fair archetypical example. I mean, everyone's is going to be different, right? But yeah, you have to understand it yourself before you can kind of own it and talk about it.
Okay. Even if everybody else knows it and you're the last one to figure it out?
A very frequent occurrence. Overall, I loved how poetic this episode was. Both visually and in how people were talking, that image of Picard looking at the image of Locutus and the superimposition of his face and the Borg tech. That shot of Soji crawling through the meditation room with the red gas chasing her, it was a prettier and kind of, I think more poetic is the word I would use for that episode than any of the ones we've had so far.
One thing I didn't understand was the reference to Hugh as a citizen of the Federation. That turns out to be a pretty big deal. I don't remember him achieving that during TNG. Any insights into that?
No, that one, I missed that entirely, actually, because I guess I've in my head kind of is as soon as someone's not in the collective anymore, obviously they're a member of whatever group they had been assimilated from, again, but now I'm kind of understanding that isn't the case, and that makes me sad.
No, and he has free right of travel as a citizen of the Federation and cannot be arrested by the Romulans. So I think that was I found that interesting as well. Did you feel like we learned really any more about the artifact itself, where it might have come from, on the role of the artifact in any of this?
Not really. I'm kind of curious why the Romulans have it. Is it just because it was in their zone or their former zone? Who authorized the project if everyone hates the Borg so much? Because it's a Federation project, but why? If there's this, deep dislike and distrust, I would like some more answers about the artifact.
Well, perhaps we'll get them.
Hopefully.
Well, Megan, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time, but I'm greatly looking forward to episode 7.
Me too.
All right. As always, this is Tom Fox and
Megan Doherty.
Until next time.
If you enjoyed this episode of Trekking Through Compliance, you can help it grow by sharing it with the biggest Trek fan you know.